I'm looking forward to what you all are doing.
I'm super excited to be a part of what you guys are doing.
The mold that you all are building is a powerful thing.
I've been watching how you guys have been collaborating, and I just want to applaud you. I'm watching you guys. I'm learning from you. I'm admiring you. So thank you for having me on.
Each other, man. The Academy Podcast definitely is in support of Recharge Pod or whatever you're going to call this thing, man. Whatever it is.
Hey, this is Seth Yolorda.
Yo, what's going on? This is Pastor Noah Weinstein.
This is Pastor Puck Fordham.
This is Pastor Tina Kerger.
I'm Pastor Sean Moss.
This is Pastor JD.
This is Pastor Kimberly Mann.
What's up, everybody? Pierre Quayne here.
What's up, everybody? This is Pastor Kyle Crawford, and you are plugged in to the Recharge.
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 Recharge. Recharge.
Recharge
Podcast.
Listen, man, we are here. Episode 5. We're excited for Recharge Podcast. Today we are covering leaders, our readers. We have our brother in ministry, Pastor JD, in the building. We're going to bring him on right now. JD, what's up, bro? What's good with you, man?
Hey, fam. I'm glad to be on the first podcast that I've participated with you guys. And look, this is amazing. 5, that's huge. 5 is a big number. Yeah. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you guys for the invitation.
Dude, appreciate you, man. He did a revival for 4 weeks online called the Quarantine Revival. That was part 2, 4 weeks
Part
online,
2.
right?
Yeah.
The first one,
series.
the prophecy series. The first one was just a quarantine revival that lasted how long?
21 days, 3
21
weeks.
days, 3 weeks. And then he came back. I think he took like, what, a week break, 2-week break?
Yeah, about a 2-week break. And we came back and did the 28 days. So 21 to 28, was that 49?
49, bro.
49
That's
days.
crazy, man.
Revival.
Whoa, that is major. And we watched every single night, man. And I have to affirm not only your ministry, but also the vision that God gave you for both quarantine revivals. And we want to celebrate you here for your obedience to what God gave you. JD, man, listen, we want to just clap our hands, man. We salute you. We celebrate you.
I'm going to put the applause right here.
Hey.
Let's do it. Listen, because in ministry, it's difficult for God to not only give you vision, but for you to be obedient enough to go forward, even if you've never seen it happen before. But you not only did one, you did 2 of them. And in the span of 49 days worth of content. And so if you have not watched or tuned into Quarantine Revival, they're archived at this moment. There's a Quarantine Revival page.
This podcast is primarily geared towards, this season is primarily geared towards, men and women that are coming out undergrad and going right to a church, or graduate school going right to a church, man. So just kind of give us like briefly just your experience, your crash course into pastoral ministry, man.
Wow. Well, I love this topic because we need this, don't we? Like guys who are shifting into full-time ministry, as well as guys who are already in it, because sometimes we move down the line and we kind of forget those lessons we initially learned. So it's always great to go back over it. So this is beneficial for not just those coming out into the ministry on the front lines there in your first district, but also those of you who've been pastoring for a while. We're going to have a good conversation. So I'm excited about this. And anything I can share that can be a blessing, it's always a privilege. And I have to affirm you guys because you just, affirm me, and I appreciate that. But I need to affirm you guys because you all doing this collaborative effort is such an inspiration to see. Because with this virtual environment that we're currently in, a lot of guys are burning out. I've had conversations with people, and y'all already know that going virtual, it puts you in somewhat of a weird space because it's hard there's no line of demarcation. There's no line of differentiation because your office is at your house and like you're Zooming and you're doing StreamYard and all these different things. So the fact that you guys are doing it together, I'm sure has been a blessing so that you can help carry the load and support one another. So kudos to you guys for the spirit of collaboration that I see. And also for you guys launching out and doing this podcast and Recharge. Like y'all are doing some great ministry. So I appreciate you guys for being those trailblazers that we need out here. Not everybody's tech savvy. So just seeing it helps us know that it can become a reality for us. So thanks for being that example. I love y'all. Cali boys. Hey,
yes, sir.
Hey, West Coast,
look, we're not going to talk about the Lakers right now because I am excited. If anybody's going to do anything in this bubble, I'm betting on the Lakers, y'all, because LeBron, he's one of the most disciplined players out there. I heard Draymond Green talk about that. Being in a bubble, it changes the dynamic of everything. So if you need discipline to be in that thing.
Absolutely.
luckily, LeBron is that dude. He is extremely disciplined and he's hungry. He knows his time, is fleeting. So I'm sure that this is going to be an opportunity he's going to seize. So y'all, let's go ahead and get ready for that Laker parade. We're excited about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So back to ministry, man. Back to ministry. Yeah. So listen, so I went to Oakwood University. And I'll share this with you, kind of a little backstory. Yeah. I'll never forget. I was at Madison Mission, a church that my dad pastored while I was still at Oakwood. And I believe I was in my junior year. And I remember Ian Callender, Earl Callender, all the Callender boys, y'all know them. Their father was in town and he pulled me to the side, asked, hey, what's your desire? What are you planning to do after you graduate? What do you think the trajectory of your ministry is going to look like? And I'll never forget, my father's a pastor. My grandfather's a pastor or, was a pastor and a president, as well as my great-grandfather on my grandmother's side. So we come from a line of pastors. And of course, I'm looking at dad's trajectory. I'm thinking, okay, what did dad do? He went to Oakwood. And then after that, he went to Andrews. And then after that, he went over to Louisiana. Then he jumped into the field, right? So I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to go to Andrews after I graduate, knock that master's out, and then keep it moving. I'll never forget what he said. He said to me, that's not going to be your trajectory. He said, because time is short. God is coming soon. And you need to get out to the field ASAP. And I'm like, okay, I mean, that sounds great. Come to find out, man, that next year, my senior year, before we got to graduation, before we ended that year, South Central Conference offered an opportunity to join them. That was actually after Allegheny West. Who was the president at that time? Yeah, Freddie Russell was the president. And he said, hey, I want you to join. I was excited. Yeah, let's do it. But then South Central, which is where I grew up, they were like, hey, we want you. So I ended up staying with South Central, and South Central sent me straight into the field. So I did not go to Andrews first. I ended up getting my master's degree after I was in the field for a while. And I did that at Oakwood. And even Oakwood's master's degree program is tailor-made for those who are in the field. So you can remain in full-time ministry. And you guys know this. So I was able to, while still pastoring, go and get my master's degree. But I say that to say I did not have the Andrews training before going out, right?
Right.
So I had the training of my undergrad, and I had, the connection to, mentors, pops, people I can call. So I'm excited. I always had the mentality, and I encourage people to do this, that the prayer that you pray is, God, if you don't want me to go through the door, shut it.
Thank you, bro. Yes.
That is our prayer every single day.
Every time,
like open the door that needs to be open, close the doors that need to be shut.
Yeah.
That's it. Because I'll never forget in college, man, I would. There were some great opportunities that were presented to us at Oakwood, because Oakwood is like that place where you got all these ministers that are being tutored and mentored by the best of the best, right? So we would be given opportunities. Hey, you young guys, I know you're not out in the ministry full time yet, but come and speak for my youth day. Come and speak for this federation. And a lot of my boys, man, during that time, it blew my mind. They would be given invitations, and they would then say, hey, I'm going to pray about it first, and then I'm going to come back. And I'm not saying that you should not pray about it, but a lot of them missed out on opportunities because their prayer was my prayer was just different. I'll just say that. My prayer was, God, if you don't want me to go, don't present the opportunity. Because if it presents itself, I'm assuming it's your will, right? Yeah. And you make it clear to me that I don't need to go. But I'm not going to go until he says it. I'm going to go until he says don't. I was hungry for opportunity. So when the time came for me to go into ministry, I'm running, right? I'm running. I get a call. South Central sends me to Sylacauga, Alabama, and Talladega, Alabama. That's my district. Sylacauga and Talladega. Now, the thing is, we had some amazing preachers and pastors who came before me there in that specific district. For instance, the late, great Russell C. He was actually a pastor there at the Sylacauga church. So, they had great ministers who came before me, right? And I know the legacy of ministry there. So when I get there, I'm ready. I still got my connections at Oakwood. So I'm reaching out to VOT. I'm reaching out to Dynamic Praise. We about to have concerts. We about to have, I reached out to Madison Mission's Drum Corps, and they came down and we marched around the community, let them know that we're here for your children. And we're all these visions, all these goals, all these dreams, right? I'm full. I'm ready. There are a couple of lessons, though, I initially learned, man, and I learned them quick. Number one, I came from a bigger church, Madison Mission, where the pastor was a visionary. That is, Dr. Doggy can say, let's go, and in the next 365 days, let's pay off our mortgage and raise $1 million, and they'll do it. There's no questions asked. It's what is your vision? What do you want to do? We're going to do it. But I learned that in those smaller contexts, pastors aren't necessarily, given that visionary status. Especially when they first meet you. Number one, it's about relationships. And number two, there are three of us doing everything. So while you're over here with these big dreams, goals, and endeavors, we need to know all the details. So it was very much different. The dynamic was different from where I came from to where I was going. And I had to learn that quickly, man, that while I'm excited about all this stuff, they're also in a position where like, okay, you're like the 90th pastor who's been through here. And quite frankly, if what you're saying isn't up my alley, then we'll just wait you out. We'll wait you out. So we had, you're always going to have resistance with people who aren't feeling the vision, people who don't want to jump on board. But I had to learn quick, man, that your motivation can't be tied into the applause of the crowd. But you have to make sure that you're in alignment and in harmony with God's will for your life in that season. And of course, there are different dynamics that you have to learn. I didn't really understand fully the idea of the meeting before the meeting, So I'm coming up in there with in the meetings, dropping these big plans on the table, and these people are singing for the first time are looking at me like, "Negro, like when we gonna share? We're not gonna vote on this until we have a talk, and we need to talk, and talk about it some more before we get to a place where so the dynamics were different. There were a bunch of different lessons that were learned. I have some amazing stories of God's power, but I also have some hilarious stories where you're just trying to do some stuff and you just fall flat on your face. Let me first say, man, listen, if you're not failing, you're not growing. Like the idea of just trying stuff and being okay with it not working look, my dad always said it. If you shoot for the stars, if you shoot high and you miss, I'll be much more grateful for that courageous heart than for you to shoot low and hit it every time. So, idea that if you fail, it's all good. You never lose. You just learn. You just learn. Yeah, you never lose. You just learn. So my encouragement is just keep trying stuff and make sure that you're not speaking, at people, but you're speaking with people and you're taking people along with you. Because especially initially in my ministry, man, I'm like, y'all better jump on this moving train, or you're going to get left. And it's like, you can only get so much done like that, man. You got the idea of collaboration, camaraderie, team, shared vision, and all of that. Those were concepts that were foreign to me initially that absolutely led to some lashes, I was also very caught off guard, man, initially by how petty things could be in church, especially when it comes to leadership. Number one, you're not going to be everybody's style. Yeah. Some people are going to love the way you preach. Some people it's going to irk them. Some people are going to celebrate the way you present yourself, and other people it's going to irritate them. So, just this idea of pleasing everybody, it's an impossible task, which is why even the Bible, Malachi, is it Habakkuk, where it says, look, what does the Lord require of you? Like that's the question that you need to be asking. Right. What does the Lord require?
I think you just gave a whole lot of nuggets for our young preachers who are listening to this podcast, because there's an understanding that when you come into ministry, you have to be perfect because you've been educated on all fronts, right? Yeah. You've been given the tools, now go and be successful. But I like what you have just laid out before us, because your context is from a bigger church to a smaller district. And the reality is most of us who are coming out of our undergrads or even your master's program, coming into the conference, they're going to send you to these smaller districts. And so you have to be comfortable with failing. But most of us aren't comfortable with the idea of failure. So how do you reconcile falling forward and yet growing at the same time?
Well, number one, I love that phraseology. Falling forward that's powerful. The idea is that you have so much in front of you. And my mentality was, if I want to get to this place of effective ministry, that doesn't happen through osmosis. That happens through action. That happens through experiences. So the sooner I get out there and try, the farther along, the sooner I'll be, if that makes any sense. It really just depends. And some guys aren't necessarily into growth. I've had conversations with people who are kind of into the maintenance ministry. And if you're into maintenance ministry, I don't have much to share with you because that's just not the cloth from which I've been cut. Like the idea that there's always area of opportunity. There's always a place where growth can be experienced. And those are areas that I'm looking for. Those are the opportunities that I'm seeking to see where can we grow? Where can we increase? Where can we enhance? Where can we stretch? Where can we attempt? Where can we, I want to find those opportunities where we can become better. This idea of maintenance ministry is, there are a bunch of different perspectives here. One is, look, I'm glad to have a job and I'm not going to do anything that's going to threaten my status as a pastor, especially when you know that these guys, and let me throw it out there, at least in our context, we have people who have the president on speed dial. These folk might be the members, the ex-members of the president who used to be their pastor, who they have a strong relationship with and will call the president on you in a heartbeat. I have multiple conversations. One of the presidents actually received from one of my churches, ma'am, that I pastored, and I've pastored a district, Sylacauga, Talladega, in 2 churches in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, over in Houston, Texas, over in Orlando. I'm now in West Palm Beach, and I was also youth pastor at Madison. And a number of these different spaces of ministry provided a bunch of different opportunities. One was to learn that lesson that, look, at the end of the day, these folk know these administrators and they will call. But I have to be confident in who God has created me to be and be okay with backlash, even from administration. If what I'm doing is not immoral, if what I'm doing is not anti, the word, then listen, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna go for it. And you have to know that stuff will take place. I'll never forget. I got a call from the president. He said, "Hey man, did you know that there has been a letter of grievances? It's a list of grievances against the pastor that has been sent to me." I said, "No, I didn't know that." Who sent it? He said, "Well, it's been signed by a number of your leaders." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, no, I didn't know this." He said, "What do you think we should do?" And my whole mentality is, look, let's do it the way Jesus said do it. He says, look, if you have aught against your brother, go straight to him. And then if you can't work it out, go to somebody else. So I suggested to him, I said, listen, I think that we should just have, the opportunity, provide for me the opportunity to have conversations with these folk who've never said anything to me about this stuff. Right. And that, dude, and when I read it, man, and I'm just throwing this out here just to share some of my experience. When I read it, there were things on there like the pastor's name is misspelled on the sign in the front. As if I'm the one who put my name. Come on, bro.
They exposed themselves.
Come on, bro. They exposed it. Right. And a bunch of petty things like that. Pastor threatened us during communion service. And it's like, wait, what are you talking about? So those type of things will happen, man. It's a part of ministry, but you just have to be number one. You want to be compassionate, connected with your membership. You don't ever want to have a higher than, I'm on this lofty position. I mount the pulpit every week and I preach down to the people with whom I'm in connection. No, you have to be compassionate. That's the prayer that Solomon prayed, right? Don't just give me wisdom, give me compassion for the people that I'm supposed to lead. And that has to be a prayer of ours, because with that, you can end up having resentment toward people, and the lines of demarcation that have been drawn in the sand, where they're like, either you're gonna be with us or against us. Like you're gonna deal with so many different dynamics in the realm of pastoral ministry, and you just got to be okay, number one, with who God has called you to be, and be solid in that, and be okay with failing, and be okay with contention, because Jesus had that. And I'd venture to say that if there is no contention, that very well might be an indicator, and I'll say it might be an indicator that you're not doing anything meaningful in tearing down the kingdom of Satan.
There's something you said, JD, and I know our time is here, but you said something about maintenance ministry. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, when you come into a district and you try to shoot your shot, so to speak, and it gets shut down, naturally you will go into maintenance mode, right? So, when we are asked to go with excellence and have a standard of ministry, how do you continue to fight for excellence when your members, on the other hand, don't expect excellence? They are the maintenance, so to speak.
Right. Well, there are a couple of things that can be said here. So I think there is a level of sensitivity that we have to have, especially with the different dynamics that we'll experience in the realm of relationships with our people. Let me explain what I mean. There is a book, and I plan on sharing with you guys, a list of some of these books that we can read. One of them is It's entitled Leadership, Theory, and Practice by a guy named Northhouse. And this is a book that I'm actually, I was introduced to in this doctoral program I'm a part of now as it relates to leadership. And in there, he deals with a bunch of different approaches. One of the approaches to leadership that I really appreciated was the behavioral approach. That is, every action that we have as leaders falls into two categories. You're either doing something that has to do with building or enhancing relationships, or that is intended to help produce results. So relationship and results, people, productivity. Those are like the two areas, right? And there is this grid. It's called the Blake and Mountain Managerial Grid. And imagine with me that you have an X and Y axis, right? So if the vertical axis is relationship, and then the horizontal action is results. Vertical action is about people. Horizontal is about production. They suggest that you have 81 different places you can be, 9 going up, 9 going across. So 81 different places you can be. And they, in order to kind of explain it, go to the extreme. There are 5 extremes, right? So a leader who is low in relationship and low in result, who's right here, they call that the impoverished leader. That's the leader who's just trash. Yeah, that's where you don't care about people or results. And then over here, just for the sake of time, over here where you're high in productivity or high in results, but you are low in relationships and people, you're like the punishment leader, where you're always talking about firing somebody if they don't get something done. You don't care very much about them, but you care about the product. So that's here. That's also not really effective. Then you have the middle of the road one where you're halfway, up, halfway over, and they suggest that that's not as effective either. But over here, you have somebody who's high on relationships and low in productivity. They call that the clubhouse leader. That's the person. That's the one who's, everybody's gonna love me. That's all I care about. Results that, that's not really important. So again, there's no motivation for getting objectives and goals accomplished and completed. You're just having fun. And then over here, where you're high on relationships, high on results, they suggest that is, that's an amazing place to be, where you care about people, but you also are still willing to push them to get things done. Now, here's my thing. I'm thinking initially that you got to be there, high on results, high on relationships. That's where you always want to be. However, and this is kind of answering your question, there is a dynamic here where you have to be sensitive to the situation. And the suggestion was given in the book that think of a principal who comes to school a day after there was a school shooting. Do you think they're going to be high on results on that day? Or do you think they're going to be high in relationships? They're going to try to figure out how we can meet the need, the emotional needs, and testing and grading and all of that is not that's not a priority. And quite frankly, it depends on what your situation is. Some churches, man, have been in a season of straight trauma based on not just previous administration, but based on just community stuff. Some churches are planted right in the community where there are shootings every day, and there's a bunch of stuff happening. So you have to be sensitive to the time, to the season. So I'm not suggesting that we should always be cracking the whip trying to accomplish some big thing. Even right now during this pandemic, it might not be the time to really be pushing souls and goals. And maybe this is the time where we are compassionate, where you're literally recording a video every day saying, hey, I'm praying for y'all. Know that your pastor's interceding on your behalf. And you're more prioritized with that compassionate kind of relationship-oriented action as opposed to being. So I'm saying that to say that there is no, one way we should be all the time. But I am here to say that no matter what you're doing, whether it's, relationship or results, whatever that concoction of actions is that you should be taking, you should never be complacent. You should always have a hunger for excellence. You should always be seeking to not just better yourself, but better the environment. And how you do that is up to the Spirit and God. But you got to stay connected because, again, different situations require different things. Previous pastors who come before you might have in that season needed to be more leaning toward one side than the other. You might need to be in this season, maybe more balanced, maybe not leading as much, but you got to pray about it and God's going to lead you. And you got to be okay in whatever direction God points you in to just go full speed. Don't be half-hearted with what you do. Go with excellence. Go with the desire to literally just tear the devil's kingdom down, planting the banner of Christ in the heart of the enemy's camp. Do it because that's what God has called us to do. So whatever it is he's placed on your plate, your ministerial plate, man, don't hesitate. Live with that passion, with that. Romans 12:11 says, never be lacking in zeal. Keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. That means you stay lit all the time, no matter what it is I'm doing. If all I'm doing is saying, y'all, I love you, just say it like you mean it. You know what I'm saying? If all you're going to do in this season is send out communication to your people to say that I care about you, and we're not going to be over here trying to figure out all this programming. Look, whatever you do, just do it to the best of your ability, and be okay with failing as you're trying to accomplish great things.
I love that, man. I love that, bro. Obviously, you talked about just some books that impacted you, you know, and your trajectory as a leader, and things that are still impacting you. And one of the things, man, we just want to, you know, tell and reiterate anyone who's listening, man, is, you know, you can't be an effective leader if you're not consistently learning. If you're not reading, man, if you're not, you know, paying attention to what's happening. But one of the things that, you know, your dad used to beat into all of our heads is you got to read, man. Read everything. Read anything and everything. Read that thing, man, because it's going to help you, you know, not just necessarily with illustrations to preach from, but literally it's going to help you and enrich your leadership. Give us some things that you're reading right now. And then if you don't mind just sharing like the benefits of consistently reading, man.
Absolutely. So like you just mentioned, we got to stay hungry for more. And one of the ways you gain more is by sticking your head in a book and reading. I always said that you want to be able to withdraw. You can't make withdrawals without making deposits. So, you know, you want to be able to say what needs to be said, do what needs to be done, but you got to fill yourself. And one of the ways you do that is by reading, period. So of course read your word, read, you know, all these other, you know, commentaries and things of that nature, you know, stuff, theological stuff. But I got some books that have been beneficial to me that I want to share with you guys. Number one, there's a book called Crossing Over by Paul Scanlon. The full title is Crossing Over, Getting to the Best Life Yet. And in that book, that was an amazing book, especially starting out in ministry, because he uses the illustration of the Israelites who had their heels facing Egyptian bondage, but their toes are facing the River Jordan. And you've reached that barrier that's between you and your promise-filled future. And the idea of crossing over, trying to get across the barrier, is something that's worthy to be noted. And he deals with that thing. He dives into it deep. And I think that you guys should be able to glean some from that book. And I'm not going to give it all to you, but he does talk about that space is the liminal existence of our spiritual lives. That's where you are crossing in. Think of walking through a doorway where you're no longer where you were, but you're not quite where you're going. That's that between space, and how to cross over, because that it applies especially to ministry, to church. There's so many practical things that he gives us to do in that book that I think will be a blessing to anyone who's hearing and wants to read this thing. Crossing Over, get it. It's an amazing book. I'm just going to throw one of the tidbits in there from that book. I loved it. He dealt with the story of Tamar and Onan. If y'all remember, Onan was the guy who spilled his seed. As opposed to doing his due diligence in seeding the next generation. And he talks about how many of us have some Onan leaders who are positioned to seed the next generation, but they refuse to do it because they're selfish and they don't want to share. And that's pretty much, look, that book.
I'm getting it right now.
Listen, bro,
I'm getting it right now.
It's good. It's so good. It's so good. So that's a good one, Crossing Over. And it's actually written by a pastor who is kind of pinning his experience of taking his church from being a place where people would sit in the pews and would leave during the welcome time, would leave their purses right where they were, go to the other side of the sanctuary and come back knowing that their purse was going to be there. He said that was the biggest indication to him. He said, clearly, we're not pulling anybody in here because we need, I want for y'all to not be able to leave your purse, and go to the other side because you don't know these folk around you. But anyways, he talks about his experience and it's great. There's another book, Pagan Christianity, is really good. That's by Frank Viola and George Barna. That book deals with kind of a lot of things that we do in church, that we give credit to the Bible for being the source and the reason for which we do these things when they don't have anything to do with biblical mandate, but has everything to do with tradition. So that's a really good one. Now that's going to push you. You got to be ready for that one because it's going to challenge a lot of what we view as being kind of just, Christianity staples. But then there's another one that's really good. And this helped with my preaching. This was a book called A Cast of Characters by Max Lucado. A Cast of Characters. He just deals with a number of characters in the Bible and he unlocks that thing. Let me throw just a couple more if y'all go with that. Bro, all right.
Lay it on us.
Listen, Motivation Manifesto. Now, my dad is the one who told me about this book. That book is written by Brendan Burchard. And he talks about, man, why is it that we, having been endowed with the heart of a courageous lion, do we live like mice? He deals in that book. If you need some motivation, man, that book right there will motivate you. He talks about how we were created, with these, we have to declare, there are 9 declarations, I believe, that we have to declare every day about who it is that we are in Christ. And listen, that's a good one. So go get that Motivation Manifesto. There's another one that was good that I ran into in my master's program, and that was Simple Church. Simple Church.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Come on, man.
Yes,
that's
sir.
a good one too. Y'all read
Yes,
that
sir.
one? Yeah.
Yes,
That's
sir.
by Tom Rayner and Eric Geiger. And they pretty much talk about, hey, we need to be less program oriented and more process oriented. Yeah. And simple is better. That's why Google is better than Yahoo. Because when you go to Yahoo's page, you got all this stuff on there. Google keeps it simple, man. And they know the power of simplicity. So that's a good book when it comes to just church culture and programming. And then there's one that was good for my relationship with my wife. This one is good because it's not only good if you're married, it's going to bless your marriage, but in addition to that, it'll help you interact with those with whom you are leading, and those who you are shepherding. And that is Overcoming Emotions That Destroy. Now that that one's written by Chip Ingram, and that one pretty much deals with anger profiles. We all express anger in our weak moments, typically in one of 3 ways. You're either a spewer, that's aggressive, stuffer, that's passive, or a leaker, that's passive aggressive. And you'll find that most leaders, most leaders happen to be the leakers in a specific environment, because different environments will cause you to respond differently. But in church, because you can't cuss folk out in church, because I'm not gonna go home and get a headache because y'all gonna be over here frustrating me, so I'm not gonna fully stuff. So I have ulcers and other physiological, manifestations. No, what they'll do is they'll get it out, but they'll get it out in passive aggressive ways, in these subversive ways. And that thing is good because it unpacks it. So that's going to be good on how to overcome, how to deal, how to communicate, especially when you're angry. And that's going to happen often. Why is it, Pastor, that my team, my team, you told me to lead these guys and they were so consistent, and then they just stopped showing up. They stopped saying, they had the opening, but all of a sudden now they're busy. Because they're leaking, because you frustrated them and they're finding ways to get back at you. So they were available, but now they're not all of a sudden, because they're dealing with anger in an unhealthy way. So that's a good one to go over with your relationships, like your family relationship and those dynamics, as well as your corporate dynamics. And then I'll give you 2 more. Spirit Controlled Temperament by Tim LaHaye. And that deals with the whole sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, melancholy personality temperaments. That one is good because it deals with it from a biblical perspective. Each temperament has its own inherent weaknesses. And his suggestion, his intimation is that the fruits of the Spirit are literally the answer to every weakness in whatever your temperament might be. So let's think sanguine. We happen to be those scatterbrained folk who are always moving, always on the go. Well, and we're impulsive and we can be led by the flesh easily. Well, what's the answer to that? Self-control. That's one of the fruits of the Spirit. Folk who can be cruel, like choleric folk who are bottom line oriented, and they're the ones who will fire you in a moment because you're not doing what you need to do. Kindness, gentleness, literally. The fruits of the Spirit are the answer to every weakness. And that thing is good. That thing is good. And then leadership, I mentioned that earlier, Northhouse. So I'm not going to go into that again, because that one deals with all the different leadership approaches, whether it's your situational leadership, authentic leadership, servant leadership, behavioral approach to leadership. That one does wonders in giving you practical steps on how to understand the leadership style that you have. But also, this is the reason why I think this book is invaluable. Leadership Theory and Practice by Northhouse. Because at the end of each chapter, it gives an assessment, a literal assessment that you can do and your leaders can do to find out where you land in that specific leadership approach. And then the last one I'll give you is the Emotionally Healthy Leader, and that's by Peter Scazzero. The Emotionally Healthy Leader. And of course, he has another one that's called the Emotionally Healthy Church. But the Emotionally Healthy Leader is real good to just help, with self-awareness, take you to the next level in your leadership and in your life. So yeah, those are a couple of books, man, I want to share with you guys that I thought would be beneficial.
On the description of this, I'm going to have all those books and the author and the link to where you can get them joints. So if you missed it, it'll definitely be in the description of this video at least.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. Listen, I just want to ask you one question. I appreciate all of the resources that you have just shared with us. Can you just answer why it's important for not only young leaders that are coming into ministry, but even the seasoned leaders to continue to read for not only to deposit so we can withdraw, but also as we're leading our congregation, they know when we read or not, right? Why is it important for us to read?
Well, one thing I try to keep from doing is regurgitating things I've already said a million times. And that's what we'll end up doing. We'll kind of get in that cycle of just always repeating what we have already once said, because we're not filling ourselves with anything new. But, this is required, y'all, in so many different professions. It's required. If you're a doctor, you got to stay, on top of the new stuff that is being made available. You have that learning process that is a requirement. So that you can stay relevant. And we got to do the same thing as pastors in ministry. In order to stay relevant, man, you have to continue reading. It stretches you. It challenges you. And if you're not, again, if you are not being challenged, if you're not being stretched, then you're not growing, because pain is growth, y'all. Like we have to dive and even deal with some stuff that might be uncomfortable. But look, do it. You got to read. You got to read.
One question, JD.
Mm-hmm.
For those who aren't readers, how do we go about finding good books?
Well, at least the way I do it is I love recommendations. So I'll talk to people who I come across, and I'll say, hey, man, what is it that's informing your thought? Because we don't just think things because we got a dream in the middle of the night. We typically come to certain conclusions because of what we've been exposed to. So what have you been exposed to in the realm of your library? What are you reading? And people will share with me, what it is that has been blessing them recently, and I'll get those recommendations from people. So my suggestion is to see what recommendations you can get. It's always great to be able to see with your own eyes the manifestation of power and transformation that can come when you are reading a good book. So recommendations are always a great way to go.
Listen, JD, bro, we appreciate you coming through.
For sure, bro.
Man, listen, we are praying for whatever the next set of quarantine, whatever it is.
Right.
We're praying just, that God, continues to put his hand on you, man, give you wisdom, give you insight as you are pulling from the resources that you're reading to inform whatever your next step is, man. But thank you so much for coming through and hanging out with us, man. Leaders are readers, man. Where can everybody find you before we let you go?
Leaders are readers. So you can go to jdmotivates.com. That's where you can get in touch with me if you want, booking or the actual book that I wrote. That is a 90-day devotional entitled Standing Ovation. Holler at me on Facebook, on Instagram, JD Motivates, hashtag JD Motivates is kind of what I use for a lot of my posts. So if you want to find me, you can use that hashtag. And yeah, I'm here, man. Holler at your boy.
Well, you said something at the very beginning, when we were talking about our Lakers, man, how we're gonna celebrate a parade with the asterisks. It don't matter. We're gonna have another shift there. But you said something, and I want to end here, is that as leaders, we have to be brawn. When there's no audience, where there's no fans in there, be the hardest worker in the room.
Yes.
Right? Not only be the hardest worker in the room, in order for that to happen, you have to have discipline. And so we want to leave you as Recharge Worship Podcast. In order to be leaders who are readers, you have to remain disciplined. Figure out what your discipline is. Let God grow you in that. And we pray that this has blessed you and grown you.
I'm looking forward to what you all are doing.
I'm super excited to be a part of what you guys are doing.
The mold that you all are building is a powerful thing.
I've been watching how you guys have been collaborating, and I just want to applaud you. I'm watching you guys. I'm learning from you. I'm admiring you. So thank you for having me on.
Each other, man. The Academy Podcast definitely is in support of Recharge Pod, or whatever you're going to call this thing, man. Whatever it is.
Hey, this is Seth Yolorda.
Yo, what's going on? This is Pastor Noah Washington.
This is Pastor Puck Fordham.
This is Pastor Tina Kerger.
I'm Pastor Sean Moss.
This is Pastor JD.
This is Pastor Kimberly Mann.
What's up, everybody? Pierre Quinn here.
What's up, everybody? This is Pastor Kyle Crawford, and you are plugged in to the Recharge.
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 Recharge
Podcast.